When your child disrespects you, the first instinct most of us have is to correct it fast. Maybe your voice rises, your tone sharpens, or you go straight to punishment. And let's be honest, part of that is fear. Fear that if we don't nip it in the bud, they'll grow up to be entitled, reckless, or worse, disconnected from us. But I want you to pause right there. Breathe. Because here's the truth. The way we respond in those split seconds says more about us than it does about them. What if I told you that the most powerful thing you can do when your child disrespects you is nothing, not forever, just for a moment, just long enough to notice what's really going on, not just in your child, but in you. We are wired for connection, not control. And disrespect, while it feels like a rejection, is often a desperate attempt for attention, autonomy, or understanding. Sometimes it's a cry from a child who doesn't have the language to say, "I'm overwhelmed," or "I feel unseen." Other times it's coming from a deeper place in them, and if we're being real, maybe a deeper place in us too. Maybe your child is testing limits because they're unsure of where the edges are. Or maybe they're reflecting something they've picked up from the environment, yes, even from us. This is why pausing matters, because when we don't pause, we default. And our default, unless we've done a lot of personal work, is usually a reaction rooted in our own past, how we were parented, what we fear, what we're trying to protect. I had a mom once tell me, "My daughter rolls her eyes at me and it feels like a slap in the face." I asked her, "What does that moment bring up for you?" She paused and said, "It makes me feel like I don't matter, like my voice doesn't count." And right there, she saw it. The reaction wasn't just about her daughter, it was about her story, her fear, her longing to be valued. And once she named that, she had the power to choose a different response. That's what pausing gives us, choice. But here's the hard part. Pausing doesn't feel natural when we're triggered. It feels like weakness, like letting them get away with it. But it's not. It's strength, because that pause is where you gather yourself. It's where you remember that your job isn't to win a power struggle, it's to build a human, a whole one. One who learns that conflict doesn't have to be chaos. One who learns to regulate because they've watched you do it. And I know it's tough. It's tough to bite your tongue when you feel disrespected. It's tough to hold space when you want to shut it all down. But that pause is not about surrender. It's about strategy. You're saying, "I won't match your chaos with more chaos. I'll be the calm. I'll be the ground." Because here's the truth. Our kids don't need us to be perfect. They need us to be present. And presence starts with slowing down, with choosing curiosity over control. What's happening beneath this disrespect? Is my child hungry, tired, hurt? Have I been emotionally unavailable lately? Is something shifting in their world that I've missed? That pause opens the door for those questions. And sometimes it's not about them at all. Sometimes it's about us showing up differently than we were shown. Healing things we didn't even know needed healing. Rewriting stories that say respect comes from fear, and instead choosing to say respect is built through relationship. I know that's not always what we want to hear. We want quick fixes, consequences that stick, a child who listens the first time. And those things matter, but they're not the foundation. The foundation is us. How we show up when we're tired. How we speak when we're frustrated. How we respond when we feel dismissed, disobeyed, or even disrespected. Children are always watching, even when we think they're not. And what they see in us, especially in the messy moments, becomes the blueprint for how they treat others and how they expect to be treated themselves. When we say, "You need to respect me," but we roll our eyes at them, yell, or shut them down with sarcasm or shame, we're teaching them that respect is conditional. We're showing them that respect only flows one way, from the child up. But real respect is mutual. It's not about age, it's about dignity. Think about the last time someone made you feel small. Maybe they interrupted you, dismissed your feelings, or assumed the worst about your intentions. How did that feel? Now, imagine being a child, still learning language, still learning self-control, still learning how to interpret the big emotions in your body. And the people you rely on for safety and love respond to your struggles with criticism or contempt. It doesn't teach respect. It teaches fear. It teaches hiding. Modeling respect means choosing in real time to treat our children like people, not problems to solve. It means saying, I see you, even when we're correcting them. It means listening with the intent to understand, not just to reply. And it means owning our own behavior, especially when we mess up. Because here's what's beautiful about respect. It grows in the soil of humility. If you've ever gone back to your child and said, hey, I didn't handle that well, I raised my voice, I let my anger speak for me instead of my love, then you've modeled one of the most powerful forms of respect there is: accountability. You're showing them that being the adult doesn't mean being above reproach. It means leading with integrity. And I'll tell you this, it's not always easy, especially when your child is pushing every boundary, when they're loud or dismissive or rolling their eyes. Everything in you might want to meet that energy head on. But that's where modeling respect really starts to matter. You don't have to mirror the behavior you're trying to correct. You can choose a different tone. You can pause. You can say, I don't like the way you're speaking to me right now, and I'm here to talk when we're both ready. That alone teaches volumes. Respect isn't about making our kids comfortable all the time. Sometimes respect looks like setting a firm boundary. Sometimes it looks like saying no and letting your child feel upset about it. That's okay. That's part of being a parent. But even in those moments, especially in those moments, we can be kind, we can be clear, we can be respectful, because the boundary is only as strong as the tone we use to deliver it. And let's not forget that our kids are still figuring this all out. Their brains are developing, their sense of identity is evolving. So when they test us or talk back, it's often less about us personally and more about them exploring power, voice, and autonomy. Our job is to hold space for that exploration while staying grounded in our value. One of the biggest misconceptions we carry as parents is that if we just love our kids enough, things will fall into place. And love, deep, unconditional, fierce love, is absolutely the heartbeat of parenting. But love without structure, it can leave kids feeling lost, because children need boundaries the same way they need hugs. Boundaries are what give them a sense of safety, clarity, and consistency. Without them, they're not free, they're untethered. I know some of us grew up in homes where rules were handed down like punishments, with no room for conversation, no space for grace. So now as parents, we swing the other way. We want to be understanding, we want to be kind, we don't want to be the mean parent. But here's the truth: boundaries aren't mean, boundaries are love in action. When kids don't have clear limits, they don't feel more empowered, they feel more anxious. They start testing things not because they're defiant, but because they're unsure. They're trying to figure out, where is the edge? Who's holding this together? Can I trust you to lead me? And if we aren't consistent, if we change the rules depending on our mood or give in just to avoid conflict, we send the message that the world is unpredictable and unstable. And let me be really honest, it's not about having a house full of rules taped to the fridge. It's about having a few really solid, clearly communicated expectations that are grounded in your values as a family. Not just because I said so, but because in this house we treat each other with kindness, or because your safety matters more to me than your temporary disappointment. Kids don't always need to agree with the boundary. What they need is to know that the boundary is consistent and that it's rooted in something bigger than control. It's rooted in care. You're not setting a bedtime because you like being the bad guy. You're setting it because you know their body and brain need rest. You're not limiting screen time because it's convenient for you. You're doing it because connection matters more. And you want them to grow up learning how to be present with real people, not just pixels. And listen, consistency is where most of us struggle, not because we don't care, but because we're tired. We're pulled in 10 different directions, and it's easier in the moment to just say, fine, whatever, or I'll deal with it later. But every time we bend the boundary just to keep the peace, we trade short-term calm for long-term confusion. And the thing is, kids are smart. They notice when the rules are flexible based on our mood. And when that happens, the boundaries stop feeling safe. They start feeling personal, arbitrary, like the ground beneath them is always shifting. Boundaries are only effective when they're enforced with follow-through and with compassion, not with threats or shame, not with yelling or slamming doors, but with calm, steady reinforcement. I see you're upset that we're turning the TV off now. I get it, but we agreed on the time, and I'm sticking to that. That kind of follow-through teaches that limits can exist alongside empathy. And when they push back, which they will, because that's what developing humans do, it's not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're growing a child who is trying to understand how the world works. Your consistency is what teaches them that they can trust you even when they're mad at you, that you're not just going to cave when things get uncomfortable, that you're strong enough to hold the boundary and the emotion that comes with it. And I want to say this loud and clear. You can be a warm, loving, emotionally available parent and have firm boundaries. It's not either or. In fact, that combination is what helps kids feel the most secure. They know you love them, and they know what to expect from you. That's powerful, because in the end, boundaries don't push your kids away. They anchor them. When your child disrespects you, the natural impulse is to clamp down harder, to take control, to remind them who's in charge. And I get it. It feels like they're slipping away from you in that moment, like you've lost the reins. But here's the truth. When kids are acting out, it's almost never about control. It's about connection, or more specifically, the lack of it. Disrespect is often a surface symptom of a deeper emotional disconnect. We tend to focus on the behavior because that's what's loud, disruptive, and triggering. But what's underneath that behavior is usually a need that hasn't been met. And the mistake we make again and again is that we try to manage the behavior instead of mending the relationship. We try to win instead of connect. But there's no real victory in that. Connection doesn't mean giving in. It doesn't mean letting your kid run the show or ignoring boundaries. It means leading with empathy. It means being willing to say, hey, something's going on here. This behavior isn't okay, but I want to understand where it's coming from. Because that moment of curiosity, that pause to connect instead of control, shifts everything. Now, let's be honest. It's a whole lot easier to demand obedience than it is to foster trust. You can get a child to fall in line out of fear or consequence. But connection, that's what teaches them why their behavior matters. That's what makes them want to do better, not just look better. And look, connection doesn't just happen in the big conversations. It's not just about sitting down for a heart-to-heart when something goes wrong. It's in the daily moments, how we greet them when they wake up, how we listen when they talk about their weird dream or their new favorite game. It's in the way we say good night, the way we look up from our phones when they walk into the room, the way we ask real questions and actually wait for the answer. The less connected a child feels, the more their behavior becomes a way of saying, do you still see me? Do I still matter to you? Can you handle the worst parts of me without walking away? And the truth is, the more disconnected we feel from ourselves, from our values, from our emotional capacity, the more we tend to reach for control as a way to feel powerful again. But control doesn't create closeness. It might create order, but it doesn't build trust. You know those moments when your kid is just pushing every button you have? Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is soften. Not surrender, but soften. Step toward them instead of away. When your child is being rude or explosive or defiant, they're already dysregulated. If you bring more intensity, more heat, more control into that space, the result is almost always escalation. But if you stay grounded, if you show up with calm presence, you become the safe container they didn't even know they were asking for. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. It's vulnerable. It requires us to regulate our own nervous systems in the face of chaos. It asks us to set aside our pride and choose relationship over righteousness. But if we want long-term influence in our kids' lives, if we want to raise humans who respect others and themselves, it starts with connection. And here's something that matters more than we realize. When kids feel seen, they behave differently. Not perfectly, but better. When they feel emotionally safe, they don't need to act out to get your attention. They don't need to test the limits as often because they trust the space they're in. And when they do mess up, they're more likely to be open to correction, not because they fear punishment, but because they care about the relationship. One of the most challenging moments in parenting is standing face to face with your child when they've just spoken to you with that tone. You know the one. Maybe it's laced with sarcasm. Maybe it's full of attitude. Maybe it's dismissive or flat out rude. In those moments, every cell in your body wants to react, to raise your voice, to demand an apology, to snap right back and show them who's in charge. But here's where we have to dig deep and remember that real leadership, especially in parenting, means choosing communication that's both firm and compassionate. It's not about letting them off the hook. It's not about letting disrespect slide. It's about learning how to communicate in a way that teaches rather than tears down. Because when we come at our kids with shame, blame, or sarcasm, we're not correcting them, we're hurting them. And what's worse, we're modeling the very behavior we're trying to stop. You can't yell a child into listening. You can't shame them into respecting you. What you can do is teach them how to communicate by how you respond when they don't. Let me say that again because it matters. Your tone teaches. The way you speak when you're frustrated becomes the blueprint for how your child will speak when they're frustrated. That's not about guilt, it's about awareness. When we're emotionally aware of what's happening in us, we can respond instead of react. We can say, what you just said was not okay, and I'm still going to stay calm because I want us both to get through this with our dignity intact. There's a strength in that kind of calm that often gets overlooked. People think being firm means being loud, being strong means being controlling, but there's a quiet kind of strength in saying hard things with a soft voice. There's a deep kind of courage in holding the line without losing your temper. That's what builds respect, not fear, respect. I'm not talking about being passive or letting things slide. You can absolutely call out behavior in the moment. Hey, that tone is not okay with me. I'm willing to talk when you can speak to me respectfully. Or I hear that you're angry and it's okay to feel that way, but it's not okay to speak to me like that. You're drawing a clear boundary, but you're doing it in a way that still keeps the door open for connection. And don't underestimate how powerful it is to name your own feelings without turning them into weapons. Saying something like, "I feel hurt when you speak to me that way," teaches emotional accountability. It tells your child, "I'm not here to overpower you, I'm here to be real with you." That's what helps kids build empathy. They can't develop empathy if all they see is defensiveness or control, but they can develop it if they see us being honest and still grounded. I think one of the hardest things to learn as a parent is that we don't have to win every moment. We don't have to prove anything to our children in the heat of the moment. The goal isn't to dominate them into better behavior. The goal is to guide them, and guidance takes patience, it takes intention, and it takes humility. Sometimes we need to walk away and come back when we're calmer. Sometimes we need to lower our voice to raise the impact. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves, I'm not parenting for today, I'm parenting for the future, for the adult they're becoming. Because one day your child is going to face conflict out in the world. They'll be challenged, disrespected, misunderstood, and how they respond will be shaped in part by how you responded to them when they were at their worst. Did you meet them with rage or with resolve? Did you tear them down or teach them something? Did you lead with fear or with compassion and strength? The way we talk to our kids becomes their inner voice. There's this belief a lot of us carry, often without even realizing it, that if our kids don't respect us, it means we've somehow failed, that their behavior reflects directly on our worth as parents. And when we carry that belief, we start to parent from a place of fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being disrespected, fear that maybe we're not enough. But the truth is, parenting is not a performance. It's not about doing everything perfectly so our kids behave perfectly in return. It's about showing up with courage, especially when things get messy. One of the most important and most overlooked parts of parenting through disrespect is recognizing that it's not always about us. Yes, we experience it, and yes, it hurts. But the moment we make our child's behavior solely about our authority or our feelings, we miss a deeper opportunity, the chance to help them grow emotionally, to help them understand the impact of their actions without needing to make it personal. Because if we're only reacting out of our own hurt or frustration, we end up parenting our feelings instead of parenting our child. So instead of spiraling into shame, why are they treating me like this? What am I doing wrong? Take a breath. Step back. Ask yourself, what's actually happening here? What are they trying to express underneath the attitude or disrespect? Because often disrespect is a mask. It's a mask for fear, for insecurity, for disconnection, for a lack of skill in expressing big emotions. And our job isn't to take that mask personally. It's to look underneath it with curiosity and compassion. This is where the real emotional work comes in. We've talked about modeling respect, setting boundaries, leading with connection and communication. But none of that is sustainable if we're not also doing the work of regulating ourselves. Because how we show up, especially when we're triggered, teaches our kids how to navigate their own triggers. So when you feel disrespected, when you feel that fire rise in your chest, pause, notice it, let yourself feel it, but don't let it steer the ship. Take a breath. Remind yourself, this moment doesn't define me, and it doesn't define them either. It's okay to be hurt by your child's words or tone. That doesn't make you weak, that makes you human. But what we do with that hurt, that's what shapes the relationship. That's what teaches resilience. We don't need to hide our emotions from our kids. In fact, when we acknowledge them honestly but calmly, we give our kids permission to do the same, saying, that really hurt my feelings, and I want us to talk about it when we're both ready. Models strength and softness. Now, that's not losing control. That's leading with intention. And look, this doesn't mean your child's behavior is excused. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or absorb every insult with a smile. What it means is that you are grounded. You can correct behavior without crushing their spirit. You can hold firm without becoming rigid. You can stay emotionally present without letting their storm become yours. It's not easy. Sometimes it means standing in the tension of an unresolved moment, knowing your child might not say sorry right away or at all. It means parenting for the long term, trusting that what you're planting now, your consistency, your calm, your emotional honesty, will take root, even if the growth is slow. And please hear this. Your child's worst behavior doesn't erase your best efforts. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to struggle. You're allowed to ask for help and admit that some days you just don't have it in you. That's not failure. That's honesty. And it's in that honesty that you model the very emotional resilience your child so desperately needs. Because at the end of the day, our kids don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. They need to see what it looks like to stay grounded in love, even when respect is shaky. They need to know that relationship matters more than power. And they need to know that no matter how hard the moment, we're still here holding steady